hello again, or hello, if you weren't here last time. So my name is Jen Miller. I run the Farmer Services Program at NOFA, Vermont. We do business planning and technical assistance around the state. Before I got this job, I was a diversified veg and pork and broiler producer for 7 years, then moved into the planning side of farming. So I want to do the same thing we started with last time, which is just get a quick sense of who is in the room before we really dive in, because that'll help us as we go through this. So who is a vegetable farmer? Okay, we're same proportions of things. Well, we got small livestock, dairy. Got one dairy. Okay. Poultry. Okay. Cool. So, and then years and bit. What's up? Fruit. Sorry. Oh God. How can I? My mushrooms. We got a couple mushroom people. Oh boy. We got seedlings. Oh man. Okay. So we have a very diversified farming audience here. Who is in their first 5 years in business? Cool. Awesome. And then we'll shorten this 5 to 10. Okay. And 10 plus. Yeah, we got a pretty good mix. Right. Like 35, 30%. So, and who is familiar with lean? Maybe because you just sat through my talk too. But not as accurate a question. So I'll just throw out there that as we go through this, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on terms, but if you want clarification or a definition of something, feel free to interrupt and ask. I'm going to go through some practical applications of lean on Vermont farms with folks that I've worked with, and then Taylor is going to kind of dial it into just her farm and how they've been working to improve their systems with lean themselves. So let's kick it off. So we'll do a little tiny bit of review, just because I feel like the definition would be important to get everyone on the same page. So we're going to look at the same thing. So lean is a systematic approach to identifying and eliminating waste through continuous improvement by flowing the product at the pull of the customer in pursuit of perfection. So again, just to review, we've got our key terms of eliminating waste, continuous improvement, product flow, customer pull rather than push markets, and again, you guys are defining perfection for yourselves based on your own farm goals and your stage in business. This just made me really happy. At one of the farms I was working with, these guys put up, this is pretty much straight out of Ben Hartman's book. They typed it up, put it right by the door where they have their morning meeting, so their crew has to pass it every single time. And I thought it was just a really nice way for the farm owner to remind themselves, and also to have the crew expose this over and over again. So putting lean into play on your farm can be, we have really easy things, and then we've got more technical, more cost-intensive things. In my work with farms and in talking to farmers that have been in business for a long time and that have been historically just efficient decision-making and profitable, lean seems like there's 3 major stages of business that folks are focusing in on this way of thinking. So it's super helpful in the startup phase, especially now given our increasingly competitive markets and our increasingly expensive land. So if you can earn the same amount of money on less acreage than your neighbor, you have that competitive advantage, and it's going to benefit you. So if you can put these fundamentals in place early on in your business, you're only going to be that much farther ahead of the curve. In the growth phase, tends to be, you're going along, you're hitting your 7 years, you've got an opportunity, you're exploding, you're following your business plan. There's a lot of things that can happen. And if you have streamlined processes and troubleshooting methods in place, lean can kind of get you, again, to addressing the root cause of the issues that arise in a really efficient way. And then there's the downsizing business and or the struggling business. Downsizing is not necessarily going hand in hand with struggling, but this is the other major time period where folks are looking at lean. Downsizing for the obvious reason of you might still want to maintain your same profit margin, but you are actively trying to reduce your production for various reasons, tends to be quality of life, or struggling, like your expense categories, or some of them are through the roof, and you're trying to identify ways to rein everything back in. So the examples that we have today are from mostly from starting up and then established farms that are either growing something or in a growth phase for like one area of their business, or that are just really established, profitable ventures, and they had really, really cool things to look at that can be implemented by any stage of business. So quick review, areas of waste. We're not going to go through these right now, but they'll come up in the terminology or as we look at each individual area that folks are applying lean in. So overburdening, or uneven production and sales, defective products, overproduction, waiting, unused talent, transportation, inventory, motion, and excess processing. And last time we were talking about it, overproduction and motion are by far the most common and kind of the most pervasive. And even when you're identifying things like overburdening, you then tend to have motion waste and inventory, or motion waste and overproduction embedded in those areas. All right, so we're going to move through 6 major categories. 4 of them are more production-oriented, and then 2 are more on the business management side, and look at some examples of what farms are doing to implement lean on their farm. So product flow is simply how product moves around on your farm. And most farms are focusing in on their highest expense areas: harvest, wash, and pack, storage. Your goal is going to be to remove your non-essential tasks and the barriers to getting consistent product flow through all of those different processes. You're trying to free up time for other tasks, improve ergonomics, and reduce your labor expenses. So starting with harvest, right? Developing a visual harvest management system has been critical across all farms that have been successful with this. This is a really, really simplistic example. There's not room, so in their weighing system, they have the weights right here above the scale. So you're doing math. They've got different areas of responsibility. And then this is not complicated. They're just writing down the date, who harvested, and the pounds for, in this case, this was for bulk butternut harvest, so it's not crop specific. They're taking a picture at the end of that, moving on. There's more complicated systems that we'll look at, but just making sure that this information is getting captured. We also talked about leaving seconds and defective products in the field unless you have a known market for them. So that's helping both with product flow, because you're not moving them again when you get to the barn and moving them around and around and around, and then ultimately composting them. So that's product flow and motion waste. Farmers tended to wash and pack in the field whenever possible. This wagon right here is beneficial because it can be loaded from all sides and it's not too high. So folks can do multiple crew members can be accessing it at once. And the back, you can't tell, but the back of this was set up to be kind of like a prep area. So someone that was always one step ahead of the crew, so counting twist ties, getting bins, sometimes going out to the field, dropping bins next to people, so that it wasn't everyone harvesting one bin, bringing it to the wagon, getting another tote, bringing it back. Things like that worked really well. Good, really nice example of wash and pack in the field. It's still this one directional flow concept, and then they've got their shaded area to actually get the crops out of there, or to have the crops be protected while they were still harvesting and washing and packing. This was an interesting example. This was basically a farm that didn't have a heated wash pack area yet, and all they did was set up a wash station in their high tunnel where they were harvesting the greens. So they weren't trying to carry them around the farm. They weren't getting exposure outside. They have this piece of paper right here that with all of the weights, their pack standard operating procedures. So for easy reference, whoever was doing it, invoices were hung right there, and then they were able to quickly just move it into their cooler or take it right out for delivery. Oops. Continue on with harvest. Having at least 2 different color totes was another really common theme, so that you have a harvest color and a pack color. Some people went as far as like different colors for different customers or market channels. That tends to you can create a lot of motion waste that way too, if you don't have a clear designation in a streamlined system. And farmers, at least in Vermont, are finding pretty good success with switching away from wax boxes as much as possible. So for CSA, and then for a lot of direct to retail wholesale accounts, so like co-ops, restaurants, and that's reducing not only obviously a cash expense, but that time you're spending putting together the wax boxes, and then obviously creating like physical landfill waste. But
so what are they replacing them with?
Totes. Yeah, sometimes they had like half deep compared to like what this is. This is a pretty standard size. They'd be half as high for some CSA shares, but they were just like designating totes and labeling them really clearly, and they pick them up once they just have a cycle, and the co-op's putting them aside, and they grab them. It's working pretty well. What do you say?
Capture loss on those?
No, the co-ops the accounts that it works for are just generally like you're keeping them aside. It's not like in Rite Aid where you go grab milk cartons out of the back because they're just sitting outside the store. It's protected. Yeah. It doesn't work for all accounts, obviously, but. All right, everything on wheels. Just that's it. Like, just put everything on wheels. It's amazing. It basically just gives you that flexibility to set up your wash station one way, your farm changes the next year, and you can reconfigure everything. You can reconfigure to number of employees that might be working that day, and you're saving your body. So this is a CSA, a wheeled thing that's also on wheels. So they're packing CSA, sliding them along as they're putting different items in, and it's going right into the truck. This is a pretty slick kind of like half pallet on wheels that they're stacking up their packed or fully washed and packed totes, and then this is going into the cooler. So you get this benefit, you're not carrying stuff, but then in the cooler you can also really easily reconfigure these small stacks, of like 4 totes. It works out really well, and you're not hurting your body and spending extra time doing that. More wheels. So giant greens wash tub on wheels. Another option for carrying fully packed totes. The scales on wheels. This is, it just works out especially because now, they can, depending on what they have going on with the root washer, they can wash greens in different areas of that wash pack facility and not have to worry about, crisscross product flow. One more example, a scale on wheels, weighing. This is just whatever example, but they're generally like wheeling this right to the end of their wash pack line, weighing into the cooler. Yeah. Yeah. All right. The other key concept for wash pack is making sure you've got one directional flow and you're not crisscrossing. The product's not crisscrossing its own self, and people aren't crisscrossing each other. This is obviously a linear wash pack line. This is a bin dumper. So the truck's backing up, the pallets are loaded into the thing. It's shaded, very nice, and it flows right into the barn where they can weigh, and the cooler's right back here. So this is like not what you want. If you try to draw a spaghetti diagram of your wash station, like this is not what you want to see. It was an interesting exercise drawing this, but clearly we've got a lot of issues. This was beneficial that their hoses were hanging over their sinks to get filled, but things are coming in the barn, they're going around here, back around to drain into the cooler. It's just not what you want. So this is a good exercise to do if you can have kind of a bird's eye view or have someone that's not in your system come to your farm and just draw you walking around and draw the path of the products, because once you have this, you can more clearly see what you need to change. we talked about this a little bit, but like scalable systems that work with different numbers of operators. Horseshoes are pretty nice for that purpose, so they can be operated with 3 people or one person in slower times. Metal everything, washable surfaces, smooth floors, just anything that's going to help product flow and get everything on wheels. This is a pretty good example in a really constrained space. This is a farmer who admittedly wants to invest in a better wash pack infrastructure, but it's a horseshoe. The product comes in the door, comes out of the barrel washer, comes around, gets weighed onto the pallet, and into the cooler right here. So it might not look like this beautiful thing, but as long as you can get those general paths of one direction or horseshoe, it works out. Another horseshoe example. Time. Okay. So in terms of storage, a few things were, again, if you have wheeled or segregated pallets, separating your product by market channel or storage time was identified as a pretty simple but time-saving fix. This is an example of not over-processing. So this farm used to have really nice printed stickers that they would slap on their boxes. This is a total wholesale account. And they changed to stamps. So all they do is hit the box once with this stamp. So they're saving money and they're saving time stickering. And their customers didn't care. This is a direct market farm. Really simple inventory system. So this is a pallet that has 4 totes in a square. So all they did was draw. So this means that beets are over here, potatoes are here, and there's one, and the front row is 2 totes of onions. Same thing. This is just peppers. This is these 4 crops. And if they have extra, they're dating them as well to make sure that they're first in, first out. Another interchangeable product labeling system, just these tags that are shoved in, crossed out for direct market, so it doesn't have to be pretty. We just have to know what's in that tote. Saving motion and flow because everything's getting wheeled over to the table. We're just pulling these labels off of that bar. We're not touching anything besides the actual label that we're pulling off. This picture's in here because this was kind of an interesting way to save, they join their harvest system with their CSA pickup. So they have a limited number of members that come to their farm over to a 48-hour period to get their CSA shares. All they did was set up CSA inside their walk-in cooler and cover the crops so they weren't desiccating. So they weren't coming out, setting up. They weren't having to go into the cooler to open bins out, and they weren't having to pre-pack boxes for the customers. Other storage patterns that have emerged, flexible storage zones that you can change with the seasons, and using an electronic monitoring system so that you can be alerted to a malfunction at wherever you are. Maximizing the use of vertical space. I thought this is a pretty slick onion stack in this bay that's not used at all at this time of year. Again, a storage area that changes with the seasons. So it's temperature regulated, so they've got their squash stored here, row cover, seeds here, maximizing use of vertical space by having these giant stacks where they can stack up equipment. And this changes with the season. So when they have more squash, they can shift everything over, store more squash, and then get more supplies in as they sell out of squash and move towards getting ready for the next season. Oops. Same thing, outdoor storage of totes and boxes. So they're not using valuable barn space to store these things. They've got it set up outside where they can easily grab them and take them to the end of the root washer. This is here, again, the vertical space thing. So building your barn as high as possible, and this is not technically, I guess this is on wheels too, but smooth concrete floors, slope to the drain, and you're able to store way more things. All right, so moving on to motion waste quickly. Talked a lot about 5S, but everything in its place. So simple things that you can do for this are, I mean, obviously the crew might need a little work on this board, but outlining where tools go for especially the small tools, so there's no reading, there's no thinking. You can quickly see what's missing, and people can find stuff easily. The same thing. We talked about this in the last workshop, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but this was 5S'd by a farm, and I just put this in there because he was totally psyched, and this meets his definition of perfection in his lean system thinking. And it is organized if you really looked at it and had it explained to you. But your farm might not look like, I don't know, it might not look like the most beautiful thing ever, but if it's a storage area that's not super critical, as long as it works and you know where stuff is and you can find it quickly. Another example of a pretty well organized tool thing, this is right in the field, right next to the production field over here. Workers can get stuff quickly, take it to the field, put it back. Again, with this, really like, how can you make a mistake when it's laid out right here next to the colors? Making it as easy as possible for people to not screw things up is awesome. One more example of that is that this is seeding schedule tacked right up in the right up in the high tunnel, so that they're not having to remember to go back and get their records when they know they have to seed and they don't have their binder. They can just consult this and record it later. So we don't want to have like an equipment seminar, but there was patterns that emerged over the course of the last couple of years as like tools that people can't live without, and they're pretty fantastic. So those were identified. Clearly, if you're not at that scale, there's a lot of other different hacks that you can do that can mimic this. Even simple things like getting a bed lifter instead of a carrot harvester. But really, the key here is focusing in on your biggest labor costs, identifying whether or not there is an equipment fix that will get you a quick return on investment to be able to save you money in that category. Generally, like a general rule is if you're at 40% paid labor to gross sales, you're at that cusp of like, if that goes higher, you probably have a mechanization fix. If you're like below that, you're probably just paying people really well if you're in the 30s. So 40% gross sales, sorry, paid labor to gross sales. If you creep up above that, it's generally a sign that you need to mechanize something. It depends on farm size, and if you're in the 30s, typically, there could be a huge problem, but typically it means you're just paying people well, is the pattern. We just did 5 minutes. Oh, no. All right, so we're going to fly through some pictures, and I won't talk as much because Taylor is going to be so exciting to listen to. So some interesting equipment. This farmer intentionally chose not to use a water wheel and went back to his carousel planter for ergonomics and speed. This was instead of a sweep, and he was obsessed with it, and he really thought that it did a better job because it didn't catch, like if it caught plastic, it didn't tear the whole, you didn't ruin the whole bed, and it was gentler. More fun tools, bed lifter, paper pot. We talked about this in the earlier program, but having a visibly posted equipment maintenance schedule is pretty critical, and it empowers your employees to be helping in that process, in addition to preventing catastrophes and having you have to do all of the equipment work over the winter. So in general, return on investment was not a strict rule, but anywhere from 2 to 7 years was what most farmers expect, probably not surprising to many of you. Sometimes if it was longer and it just made their lives amazingly better, they were willing to go a little bit higher. 2 to 3% of gross sales set aside as a capital reserve, so you have an equipment replacement or repair fund was a good rule of thumb. And not necessarily holding off to the point where you like actually desperately need that piece of equipment, because it's probably too late and you've probably done a lot more damage in your systems that could have been prevented by just making the jump a little bit earlier. We don't have time for the super cool video. Maybe we can watch that at the end if Taylor runs out of material. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because I want to talk about other things. This is like a whole can of worms, as you know. But some key points that come up were provide basic readiness supplies for each crew. So this is like a preset apple pruner kit. So everyone just grabs this bucket. It's automatically set up. No one's looking for things, and they know to put everything back right where they got it in their own assigned bucket. Radios are another common thing. Knives getting assigned. The right mix of specialists and generalists, so people are interchangeable and also getting the skill set that they need to A, stay on your farm, and B, do a really good job. And let's see. This was also pretty critical. Like if you're trying to figure out how to train people effectively, have experienced crew members actually like write the standard operating procedures or crew manuals or whatever system that you might want to implement. A few pictures of really good communication boards for the crew, for getting the crew prepared each day. So excellent outline, centrally located on the farm so that it was right in the meeting spot where crew is coming each time. Categorized in this case by job task, and then assorted other tasks as backups. This was another example, and they actually went so far as to have an annual or a monthly calendar, two months, and then a week of, and then we've also got a 15-minute, like, how do we get people not waiting around and for a manager to tell them what to do or using that last 10 minutes of their day effectively. And a lot of these tasks relate to 5S, so it kind of keeps that cycle going on the farm. We don't have a ton of time for this, but basically the highlights for record keeping, getting snapshot data. Don't feel like you have to record every minute of every day. If you get 2 or 3 snapshots over the course of the season and average them, that's awesome. You can have rates of work that you can apply across multiple crops or multiple enterprises typically. And making sure you're only capturing data that you're actually going to use. So again, it's in that vein of like, don't waste your time for something that the customer is not going to pay you for recording that data. And if you never look back and actually analyze it, don't record it. Figuring out what to track is not easy, I will say that. Keeping things in obvious places. Your phone is your best friend in this effort. You can essentially create a whole journal over the course of the season by taking photos with your phone, yeah. And they'll have date and time tracking, and employees might be a really good tool also. I'm going to skip this because we talked about this last time, but this is again a really, really quick and easy way for you to know if actual harvest matched up with what you wanted to get harvested. Some key metrics to throw out there, and I'm happy to email anyone that wants this afterwards because we're kind of blowing through this stuff. Yield, harvest, and weeding labor. So capture those 3 major things, prioritize capturing those things first, and you can hone in on specific enterprises or crops. You don't have to get it across your whole farm, but high value or high input crops, really try to get in on that. So some other critical ideas. I will point out this is one farm was using this and doing a really excellent job. They're a wholesale farm, so total sales of one crop divided by the labor of that crop needed to be a minimum of 3-to-1 ratio. If it wasn't, generally the crop got dropped. And he's been making decisions like that for 30 years and is amazingly profitable. Keep going. So looking at profit margins, this is our last section before we turn it over. Some common themes. You have this like interplay of like, should I grow my profit margin by keeping my expenses the same and increasing my sales? Or should I keep my sales the same and reduce expenses? Or is it some magical combination of both of them? So one thing to focus in on is yields. It doesn't even necessarily have to be like, I'm going to grow more to increase my sales, but yields inherently critical, and knowing what your yields are, capturing that data is going to make or break you. Thinking about higher upfront expenses as being offset by the increased revenue generated by the increased yield, important concept. And then again, I went to a workshop this morning that was talking about layering, right? Layering farm enterprises, but thinking about what infrastructure you already have, what systems you already have that you can add onto, and maybe you're leveling the load like that, or maybe you're just more strategically using that stuff, not adding more to your system to increase sales, but using your existing resources to increase your revenues. On the flip side of that, critical approaches to reducing expenses, knowing your cost of production, primarily labor. If you have to pick two things to track, harvest and weeding, or if you're feeding animals, probably that time. If you don't have a market for it, leave it in the field. That's one critical make or break point. And sometimes, again, like that decision to not grow a crop or to till it in because it's gotten away from you is actually going to lead to a higher net profit than if you tried to go all out and save it because you didn't want to let an account down. So let's do this. The trend that we saw is like as businesses mature, their focus really stops being on increasing sales, but so they don't need to continue to gain more and more market access. They don't need to gain more customers because they are pretty secure. They have a pretty steady revenue stream, but they can focus on increasing yield, sometimes on reduced acreage, and reducing their expenses. It's like, so once you can stop worrying about one of those three variables, it's a lot easier to focus on that reduced expense side. If you become more efficient on your land and then expand, it was generally more strategic way to go because you're avoiding overproduction and setting up systems that are just inherently inefficient. And yeah, we talked about this already. Like profit margins can be dramatically increased by adopting a less but better mentality. So, this farmer here, I really like this way of, he realized that they reduced their labor costs, so they cut their expenses, but because they overproduced and didn't monitor how their crop plan was actually being pulled in by their customer, they didn't actually realize the benefit of that in their net profit. So before we turn it over to Taylor, there's like a lot of information thrown at you, right? What I found in working with farms and the kind of approach to implementing lean on your farm that seems to work out best is that you can't, you know your farm business, you know a lot of things, but in the winter, before you've tried to do this, you can kind of come up with different ideas, but you really need the first season that you're thinking lean to be like an observation and brainstorming and problem-solving session, but don't expect to have the time to actually implement a lot of major changes that year. Just like best effort, it doesn't tend to happen. People come up with ideas and then figure out, write everything down, spend the following winter planning and implementing and making an action plan for getting your lean priority areas taken care of. And then that's just going to repeat. So hopefully you will have eliminated waste from your system. You will have more time for value-adding activities. You will have more time for doing system improvements in that second season. But again, the major changes that need to happen are probably need some more thinking and planning than you can do in like June, July, August. But if you're not paying attention and thinking like that and making decisions like that, it's like you have to have that observation period. And again, you're just continuously cycling through, eliminating more waste, focusing on improvements and value-added activities as you cycle through. And it just gets more and more and better the more you do it. So with that, Taylor's going to tell you about her farm and about her kind of journey implementing lean practices over the past 6 years. Yeah, and we'll have a lot of before and after. So here you go.
All right. like Jen said, we weren't calling it lean, but we've been doing a lot of this stuff since the very beginning of our farm, and mostly because, so we're in central Vermont, and we were told, good luck. There are so many farms in Vermont. They're all small. They're all doing vegetables. Like, there's no shot. So we said, okay, we'll go really low profile for like 3 years. We'll work other jobs. We'll figure out what need is out there maybe that we could fill, and then we'll really get after it in years after that. So we spent about 2-3 years trying to figure things out, and then 2 years ago we did that thinking period. Where are we wasting time? I'm just going to say it. I read this great book called The Art of Not Giving a Blank, and it's fantastic. You should read it. And because we spent a whole year saying, okay, we have 3 blanks to give today. What are we going to give them to? And things that kept coming up, like, I'm so pissed that I have to go shut the chickens in. We don't live at the farm. Like, okay, let's spend money on that. So that's where we went, and then we are now building a wash pack barn with a house on top of it because it's super lean, and we're starting that for next season. So we've kind of like come up into this hopefully relatively lean process. So this is us. We're super small. We produce on about an acre, plus 2 unheated high tunnels and a heated high tunnel greenhouse, and we have about 150 laying hens. We've done pork, super small scale, and also flowers, but we've cut both of those. Okay, so our product flow, we'll just start. I'm mostly pictures here. I have no written preparation, so I'm just going to get after it. I'm going to go pretty quickly because I think the thing that we've done a pretty good job at, if I don't say so myself, is our winter planning process in order to implement this stuff. So I'm going to blast through and get to that, and then we'll go to questions. So this is our site layout. This is where we started our first few years of production. We've since expanded into this field. This is our first wash pack situation, super small, 20 by 20. This is storage, and this is our new barn house, or bouse, as they're calling it. And so you can see we're pretty spread out. We don't have the ideal Ben situation where he's like, here's my house, here's my greenhouse, here's everything so close, it's amazing. So we realized that not everybody's like that, and that you can still use these principles on whatever situation you have. These are some little spaghetti lines of harvest flow in our first couple of years. This is how it is now. You can see this purple line. This is kind of going to suck because we're going to go all the way from one end of the property whoop, over here and then back to wash and then out to deliver. So this is how we started, like most people. We stuck wheels on a pallet. We got a $10 harvest cart on the side of the road. Worked pretty well for a couple of years. And then we bought this tricked out truck with roll-up sides, so it keeps shaded. So example of, 4 totes of potatoes versus a truckload. We stuck a magnet bar inside, it's right here now, that has harvest knives and a sharpener ready to go at all times. Wash pack sheds of yesteryear. We luckily did not invest anything our first year because we built our first temporary wash pack in a swamp. We started in 2013, which was a really wet year. So we were under this. It's just shade cloth, and it was in a different spot. Didn't have a picture of it, but this was ankle to calf high water all season. So it was like this balancing thing over pallets to get to stuff. Hand crank spinner, super inefficient. This is our second iteration. It's a 3-season wash pack. This is a CoolBot walk-in cooler. A lot of the spray off happened out here. And then this was a 3-bay greens washing line, spinner here, weight here, packing here, and around into the cooler. This is my spaghetti diagram. So stuff would come in. This is washing, spraying, flipping, putting into totes. A little bit better for our greens line. It kind of hops along and into the walk-in and out. What are my things? Good flow. Too tight, way too small. And we're going into winter production now, and so we've had 2 seasons of trying to wash in the winter, which we don't do. We're in the greenhouse, but still. Transitioning from a 3-season into the greenhouse, carrying everything in there takes so long that we're over it. But there's great things. So these are shelves from closets that we can buy by the linear foot at the reused housing supply store. And they work great because we can stick them wherever we need a spray table or wherever we needed. So a lot of this is like, where are we going to want things? So it's similar to the things on wheels. We didn't put anything permanent. Okay. Fishing net, we love. This is a bike-powered root washer. This is our packing line. We are also on mostly totes. Oops. This is how we label. This is with those chalkboard markers. So you can just write on as long as they dry outside of the cooler, they'll last inside the cooler until you wipe them off. It's just water to wipe them off. And instead of keeping records of what goes to, that was the thing that was really getting me. I was like, I don't care about if I sold 3 more bunches of radishes one week than the week before, but my organic certifier really cares about how many radishes I took to market. So I started just taking a picture of everything that we were taking to market, and it says on there who's it going to, what it is, the date we harvested it, and the pounds or eaches. We couldn't afford a van, and a tree fell on our car, which was a great opportunity because we bought an Element, which fits exactly our totes. We can fit something crazy like, I don't know, our whole farmer's market stand fits inside of this car. Except they don't make them anymore, and they're very hard to find. But if you can, you should get one. You can also spray it out on the inside. It's awesome. Okay, so this is how we've changed our distribution system. We have about a 75-member CSA, and we started by packing boxes like this, and it took forever, and we didn't have enough space. So we said, okay, next year we're going to do farmer's market style, which is like this, and it's gorgeous, but people didn't care. So we started just putting boxes out, and they loved it. So, so what are we spending too much time on? That was one of them. So this gets to the point of overproduction, so we don't waste anything on the farm. Our first priority, we have a hierarchy of sales. First is CSA. Everything that doesn't go to CSA goes to farmer's market. Whatever we don't sell at farmer's market goes to our restaurant accounts, who are awesome and do specials with whatever we have left over. And then we overproduce things that we have standing orders with restaurants. That's salad mix, head lettuce, tomatoes, basically. But we try not to overproduce anything else. That's a CSA share. Okay. Minimizing motion waste. You go to do the thing, you forget the thing, you go back and get the thing, there's no battery for the thing, it's dead. And that was the thing that we were giving the most blanks about. So we switched to, we have a mobile, this is a Winnebago that was decrepit in our neighbor's garage, I guess. So this is now our tool shed, and we can move it. Since we have the 2 fields, we're only producing in one each year, so we just move it to the field that we're producing in. This is our house, like many of you. So we were living about 15 minutes from the farm, so it was like, okay, here's the checklist of everything we need to get into the car, get it into the car, get to the farm, unload it, reload it, and it was ridiculous. So we're building a house on top of our wash pack, which I'm very excited about. This is it. So this is our new design, and it was designed, we are CAPS certified, which is a peer-to-peer Vermont farmer certification process. It's not quite to FSMA or GAP, but it's amazing. So this wash pack was designed with those folks. Also got help from Ben Hartman. So it's a linear flow, and this is an outdoor slab. This is all slab, everything on wheels. Let's see. It's pretty straightforward except for, So this is a tote flow, which is something I hadn't thought about at all. This is our dirty totes. So dirty totes are coming in from the field, getting dropped off on this outdoor slab. They're coming inside maybe to be unloaded on this spray zone here, but then they're going straight back out through this door and getting washed off here. So they're never going into this is the clean zone, just a cross-contamination prevention. This down here is our clean totes, so they're gonna stack right here on pallets on wheels. They're gonna go here to be packed inside the cooler and out the delivery door. They should never be going backwards. We also have 2 different kinds of totes so that they're very visibly different. And this little blue line over here, this is our egg washing zone, so it's completely separate entrance. No egg situation should be going this direction. Okay. When we think about buying something new, since we are so slow at doing capital investments, we make sure everything that we buy has 3 uses, that we have one width to rule them all. That's our, we have just implements that fit our bed width, which is also our truck width, which you'll see in a second. If it sucks, look for something else. If it's awesome, take care of it. And if it's just okay, ask why and consider if it's really worth keeping. So 3 uses. This is our greenhouse. It is also, these are our greenhouse tables. We also use them to dry garlic or cure garlic right here. And then we use it for winter wash pack. So 3 uses. This is our truck. Tacoma fits right over our beds. And that's how we spread compost until we really feel like we need a manure spreader, which might be this year. And this is our lineup of equipment. We have disc, cultivator, chisel plow, we don't use that, and Perfecta. Chickens, because I thought there might be some non-veg out there. So we don't live at the farm. Again, we have a mobile coop right here. We try to put 0 brain power into chickens. So every year we buy a different color chicken. That way we don't have to ban them. We just know, like, okay, white's out this year. Black and brown, you get to stay, you know. It's so easy, seriously. And then these are automatic doors. They're solar censored, so they're not on a timer. They just close when the sun goes down. Feeders that hang so that we're not having to dump poop out. This is winter situation. This is summer. And then heated waters, which are plastic. I know there's the metal ones that sit on the heater thing, but these plastic ones are amazing. They made it through that crazy cold snap last couple weeks ago. Chicken shores driving me crazy. It's out in the other field. I'd go out and the trash cans of feed would be empty. So we started doing this. So everybody has to check in at the chicken shore spot. Other size-appropriate tools, this is how we calibrate. We only use an earthway right now until the jang makes financial sense. So the way to calibrate it, this is a piece of roof gutter marked by the foot. We run it down, see how many seeds drop per foot, and then this can easily dump back into the seed packet. And so we did that the first couple of years to figure out what plate went with each crop. Greens harvester is amazing. Flame weeder in a baby backpack until we decided if we liked flame weeding or not. We don't. Our biggest one that was a lot of, so I'm the one who's like, yes, this looks so cool. I saw it on Instagram. We should definitely try it. And my husband's like, yeah, no, that's definitely way too much work. It's going to take too long. And so we fought so long over this guy. And because it's a kit, so that was the big thing, like how much time are we going to spend learning to do this and then fixing it because we did it wrong. So we decided to spend money on instructions and parts to put the spinner together, and it just worked right right away, which was super exciting. And we've made so much more money on greens this year because we have a spinner. Okay, employees. So we have, what's next? Okay, I'm gonna go back to that in the planning stuff. So record keeping. You know, as a beginning farmer, you're like, here's Richard Wiswald, keep track of every single crop and every single time you spend touching everything. And we were so overwhelmed by that, and it would inevitably come time for our organic inspection, and we hadn't taken the records that we really actually needed to, and we'd get to the end of the year planning, and we didn't have the records to make the decisions we wanted to make, but we had these really ridiculous other records that like looked cool, but were not helpful to our business at that point. So we spent a lot of time thinking about what do we really care about, what's actually gonna help our business, and if that's true, we need to set up a system now and really be bought into it so that day one with employees we can say, this is how our farm does this thing. Because if we're not fully committed to it, they're not gonna be fully committed to it, which is what happened to us all last year. Okay, so we had a lot of issues with like muddy hands. Oh, my hands are muddy. I'm gonna wash them first before I write something down. Or it would get sprayed by the hose in the greenhouse and records were gone for the year. So Write in the Rain makes those notebooks, right? Which are, if you haven't heard of them, they write in the rain. And your writing doesn't wipe off. They also make printer paper. So we printed all of our greenhouse schedules, crop plans on Write in the Rain paper. Pre-filled as much as, yeah, okay. So this is what we started with. It's basically our running to-do list on a whiteboard, and we realized this was way too much information for employees. I realized, that I didn't want them to necessarily know everything that had to get done. It was also really overwhelming for them to see all the things that had to be done. So this is gone now. It's just at home. We just use that for our own purposes. So we turned the board into a harvest. This is actually just packing. So this lives in the wash pack. We got all the crops here. If it's, we change it by season, but rarely, maybe 3 times a year. If it's in the CSA share, we put a star next to it. And then we have markets along the top, numbers. They make a little mark of how many totes each of those filled so that when we are packing for CSA, packing the car, we know, okay, we need 7 totes for this location. We need 8 totes for that location. This is our harvest sheet. It's a 3-season list of our crops. Whatever we're harvesting that day, I just highlight so that we're not rewriting this all the time. I write the CSA share on the side, and then harvest numbers, actuals, pretty straightforward. I'm really into bullet journals. If anybody else wants to get into bullet journals later, come talk to me. So we write down if we're trying a new thing. So this is caterpillar tunnels. We're flying away every year, so we were going to try a couple different new anchoring systems. So we take pictures of everything, but we also write it down so that we can, and it's all in one place. All my notes are in one bullet journal, and then I can make notes on the bottom, like we didn't actually like this. We liked some of it. Okay, this is amazing. This is a Google Doc form. This is how we track all of our egg production numbers now. So this is my phone. I clicked a button, and here's my little egg tally, boom, and then it comes up to my Google Doc, and it's just date, total eggs collected. Right now it has number frozen or whatever. And then, or it might say pullet eggs if we're at the time where pullets are starting to lay. And then it has an automatic, so this shoots into a Google Sheet, which has an automatic calculation of what our lay rate is, what our sales percentage of lay rate is, so we never have to think about it again. And I just hand that to the inspector. Okay, year end. Okay, not as pretty as it once was, but you can see, so we were on this track of like, we're never gonna be successful as farmers, so how do we do that? So this is our real gross and net numbers from each year of production. We are, again, on about an acre, so last year we were that's next year. Last year we were nearly $100,000 on an acre after 5 seasons. That's not including, this is owner's draw. Numbers. So we took this class, HMI. It's Holistic Farm Management, and Jen was talking about this, but you plan for profit first. So how much money do we need to make personally, and then make your farm fit that as much as possible. And that's the basis of what we do. So we have a year-end business retreat every year, which is so fun. We take 2 days. We have somebody else take care of the farm. We go get an Airbnb that has a table, and we buy all of our meals on the farm, and we plan. And this is what we go through. So we start by something that feels nice. So our achievements and disappointments from the year, stop doing, keep doing, and start doing. And we look at last year's as well. And we create 2 or 3 goals for us and for the farm. And this year it looks like creating a fertility plan that creates, I'm going to say it wrong. If you really want to know our goals, you can come talk to me. And then we create this ideal budget, which I think is amazing. So we start with our personal income. We spent a year trying to figure out how much do we actually spend. So we have a really good number right now. We don't have kids or anything, but you can always add those in. So we know how much we need to survive on. And so we start with that, because if we can't survive, the farm won't survive. And then what do we want to invest in for infrastructure for the year? What do we want to invest in for equipment? What do we want to pay employees? And then that becomes our ideal budget. And then how do we reach that budget? And that determines everything else we do. And we're constrained by land, so we can't increase production too much. But so then you're increasing sales. These are just notes, but so as far as increasing sales, if you can't increase production, one thing that we do is we ask for the highest price that we can get away with, and we convince the customer that it's okay to pay that much money. And this is something that some, business person said to me last year. They were like, well, how do you price your stuff? And I was like, I don't know how everybody else is pricing it. And they were like, well, why? Like, if somebody will pay $4 a bunch of carrots, but everybody else is charging $3, why not charge $4? And I was like, well, I don't know, it seems mean to the other farmers or something. But we did it this year. So we did 2 things for our farmers market situation. We changed our display, and we never dropped our prices through the season, and we charged as much as we thought was possible. And the season before, the most money we ever made at a market was $700 and something. And then this year, we didn't drop below $1,200. So you can do it. You can make more money with the same stuff, is what I'm saying. And the biggest thing that we say over and over and over again is give the people what they want. So we do surveys of our CSA every year. We do surveys of our wholesale customers. So like our wholesale, we charge a lot for salad mix. But what do the people want? They want salad mix that they don't have to pick junk out of. They want salad mix that lasts 2 weeks in the cooler. And we're like, hey, we can do that for you, and we can do it most of the year. So pay whatever you need to pay. And they're like, good point. Which I realize is not possible for everything, but it's the other thing we always say is it never hurts to ask, which I find to be really difficult because I hate asking. But if you have anyone on your farm that can do that, do it. Smoke and mirrors, fake it till you make it. We're a tiny farm, but we have a huge presence at the farmer's market now. So nobody knows that we're only on 1 acre. So it's possible to make yourself look better than you are. Okay, this is our eyesore. This happened in a windstorm. We inherited this canvas barn, I guess you'll call it, and all this stuff in it, and it drove us nuts for years. And then this fall, so that's our lean for this year. And then these are, hey, nice. Okay, these are just a couple more things I threw in here. So this is this piece of paper right here is a laminated winter covering guide. So it has temperatures, and it says, if it's sunny and above this temperature, uncover and open this vent. If it's this temperature and cloudy, do this. So we never have to think about it again. And this is winter watering guide. We were roasting out aphids. That's why we were excited about that. So before investing in labels for things, we made these blank ones, and we'd have to write in what each crop was for the labels, and that was annoying, but we didn't know exactly what we were going to sell enough of to warrant buying labels for, so we did that for a little while, and then it turns out arugula in this weight is what we sell, so we made labels for that. We use 2 different color rubber bands. This is wholesale, this is retail, so when people are packing, they just shoot it into the right box. This is training employees on size of garlic, so however far down it goes is what category it goes into. Oh, and that's it. Questions? Yeah.
You had a slide about employees that you said you were going to come back to, and then you didn't.
Sure, yeah, I didn't, that's true. So we came from educational farm internships where they were trying to be super legal. So we were paid, we got school credit, there were like all these things that we got. So then when we started our own farm, we were like, oh yeah, someday it'd be great to have apprentices. And then I just realized that I'm so risk adverse. We're also kind of out there. I'm part of the Vermont Young Farmers Coalition. I get interviewed often. So I was so nervous about getting in trouble about employees. So we decided we're not going to get employees until we can afford to pay them and we can afford to have workman's comp, et cetera, et cetera. The one thing we didn't have when we did get employees was a bathroom, which I know, it worked out. We used our neighbors, but still, things to consider. So we decided right up front that we were going to pay people basically what the farms that we admired were paying people. So we were part of a Journey Farmer program, and we chose a farm whose employees never leave. And we wanted to find out, like, what are they doing that their employees will work for nothing for years. And we just copied them. And so, like, one of the things we do is we give people a $100 stipend to do whatever they want farm-related with it at the beginning of the season. Because they get so excited, like they could go to a conference or they could buy rain gear or whatever, but it's so much cheaper than paying them more. So we do little things like that throughout the year, little like gifty things. But we pay, our starting pay is $11 an hour. We're at $12.50 for last year. Both of our employees were $12.50. Our pay is 20% of our budget, of our gross. And the other thing I would say is that we've gone into it knowing that we were just employees, so we still know what it's like to have like a really crappy employer, so we're trying really hard not to be that. So the thing that I'm trying to always keep in mind is that it's not usually their fault. If they're doing something wrong, it's a system, or they really have to pee and we don't have a bathroom, or there's something happening that it's not their fault. Because I'm hoping I hired people that at least have a baseline of they're not that bad. Anyone else? No.
What's fascinating, I think you said you grossed about $100,000 on an acre.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very high.
I don't know. I was surprised when that number popped out at the end of the year.
I'm just curious what the mix is. Is a lot of greens and...
We do about, it's about a third CSA, a third farmer's market, and a third wholesale. Our wholesale is just restaurants and one summer camp. And our CSA is about 75 members from June through December. And farmer's market is just the one farmer's market.
And you're not no winter production?
We started 2 years ago, did it again this winter, but our sales are not good for winter right now. keeps us busy.
It's kind of a personal question, but you've been really great sharing your information. But what do you, maybe not personal, but business, financial, what are you getting for your salad mix wholesale? Because I'm having a lot of hard times working with chefs. I'm actually in the Saratoga area. There's so many restaurants here, but no one wants to buy my salad mix, and I think maybe my price is too high compared to what they're getting from Cisco, or I don't know. Can you talk a little bit more about how you got started with the restaurants and what your price is?
Yeah, so the way we got started with restaurants was because we had so much left over from farmers market, and we're like, well, what do we do with this besides feed it to the pigs? So we would go around to restaurants that were on our way home, and we'd stop at every restaurant after farmers market every single week, and we'd say, look what we have this week. No? Okay, see you next week. And finally, they started buying things. They'd be like, oh, we've noticed that you have salad mix every week, and that's pretty cool. Or, we forgot to order kale this week, and you have it. Okay, fine, we'll buy it. And so it took a while it probably took a year and a half of them seeing that we were consistent. Our quality was always at the same level. We didn't approach any wholesale until we were like, okay, we're 4 years in, we can grow things now. So we always started at a high quality bar. And by that, I mean, I still have so much to learn, I don't want to say. But we charge, depending on the season, $8 to $10 a pound for salad mix. It's certified organic, but as far as giving the people what they want, they don't care about organic. They really don't. So the things that we found that they care about are consistency, longevity in the cooler, and that they don't have to pick stuff out. So they're not paying. That was the biggest argument that we made with them was, okay, how much do you pay that guy over there to pick through your salad mix every week? Or how many sales do you lose because people are like shoving stuff to the side of their plate?
How much of a percentage are eggs of your gross?
Let's see, about 20%. Yeah, eggs are another one. We don't make any money on eggs, but it's marketing. So that's one of those things where we keep it because we are now one of very, very few organic egg producers in the state. So we only have 100 layers, but we get so many customers because they're like, oh, you're the egg people. I've been looking for pastured organic eggs. And we're like, great, $7 a dozen, thanks. That's $4 more than anybody else. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you speak on how you've weaned up your layer operation?
Yeah, the biggest things have been only spending the time with them that we need to. So let's see. Keeping health high is a big one so that we're not having to deal with problems. So we do apple cider vinegar in the winter. They always have clean, fresh water. Let's see, how else have we leaned it up? We try to, right now the biggest unlean thing is feed. We're still at the size where we're in bags, but we got 2 really big trash cans that last the right amount of time for their moving. So we fill when we go out with a truck to move the coop, we fill the grain. It lasts till we move them again. Record keeping has been a big one, where it's just really quick. Any employee can do it. And the other big, egg washing. So I don't know. We built a bubbler, and it's cool, but it's really loud, and it's not super effective. We're still spending a lot of time doing that. I don't know. It's not very lean. Eggs aren't lean on a small scale. Or any other questions for Jen? We have like 4 minutes. Yeah?
If I'm going to start something, what do you suggest? Where's the biggest profit margin? Where's the less? I mean, labor I'm having a hard time dealing with. I need the best margins to start with. I want to grow, but I'm not quite sure what to choose. Yeah.
Yeah. So we wanted to do a CSA. We wanted to be involved in the community. We wanted people to feel committed to the farm. But we heard on the street that salad mix was the way to go for small scale. We have a lot of friends in the Midwest who are super small scale farms, and they seem to have a similar makeup and seem to be still in business after 10, 15 years. So that's just the model that we followed. We have not done crop-specific enterprise budgets because it was too much for us at the time. I feel like for our farm, at about year 7 is when we're going to start cutting crops. Right now, we grow crops that our CSA likes to eat, and we know that because we do the surveys every year. We don't grow the super weird crops. We don't grow kohlrabi. We might not grow storage turnips next year because they just whine so much about storage turnips. But so as far as profit margin, I don't know the exact numbers for us. We were more doing it in this push-pull situation where we were like, okay, what do people want? Now how do we make that profitable?
So I just want to throw out there that we just went through like a lot of material, all slammed really fast. We're working on developing these, putting together a lot of those points into like front and back page resources for like the key tips, lessons learned over the past couple of years. So I'd say like by beginning of March, you can look for those on our website as additional resources, if that is helpful. And yeah, I guess to answer your question, like it's the it depends model. Like a lot of it is your cost of production, when your labor is available, how are you capitalized, how much are you capitalized. It's not an easy answer. You know, some people might just focus on storage crops because you have a full-time job and you can sell them. You know when your harvest window is and you can sell them all winter, and your profit margin might be awesome because that's an efficient system for you. You might have a better, carrots might be more profitable than salad mix because of what you've got available to you. So we also have cost of production. NOFA Vermont, we also have cost of production crop-specific sheets and some of those whole farm ratios that I was referencing. There's a couple of them on the table in the visitor area, but that's another resource, and it is like a crazy workbook to actually do it yourself for the first time you do it. But again, it's picking and choosing which crops you really need that information for and fine-tuning your systems based on that, because it might highlight some areas that you want to apply lean to. Yeah. Cool. All right, thanks for coming.